They say the most terrifying monsters don't live in forests or graveyards. They live inside houses that look perfectly normal. Houses where someone is always watching you, even when you think you're alone. I was 23 when this happened. At the time, I had just graduated and was still floating between jobs. To survive, I did whatever paid quick cash: babysitting, house cleaning, running errands. That's how I ended up with a call from a man named Mr. Ellison. He told me he'd be traveling for a week and needed someone to stay at his place to look after his German Shepherd, Shadow. He explained that Shadow didn't do well when left alone overnight. He needed someone in the house. The pay was more than I usually made, and with bills piling up, I couldn't say no. I met him 2 days later. Mr. Ellison was in his 50s, thin, with pale skin and eyes that didn't quite match his forced smile. He wore frameless glasses and a worn brown jacket. He was polite, even friendly, but there was something in the way he looked at me, too long, like he was measuring me. His house was isolated, tucked at the end of a gravel road surrounded by woods so dense it felt like the trees themselves were trying to hide it. The place looked normal enough on the outside, but the silence around it was unsettling. No traffic, no neighbors, just the whisper of branches against the windows. Inside, the house was dated: stale beige carpets, faded floral curtains, heavy oak furniture. It smelled faintly of dust and something else I couldn't place, like damp earth. Ellison walked me through the details. Went to feed Shadow, where the spare key was, which fridge items I could help myself to. He showed me the guest room, a small space just off the living room, with a bed, dresser, and a single window facing the yard. He told me that's where I'd be staying. The first 2 nights passed quietly. Shadow was a good dog, loyal and calm as long as I stayed nearby. I took him on walks through the woods during a day, watched TV in the evenings, and went to bed with him curled up at my feet. Everything felt routine, safe. But the 3rd night shattered that illusion. I was lying on the bed, scrolling through my phone, when my eyes caught on something across the room: a digital alarm clock sitting on the dresser. I hadn't noticed it before. It was sleek in black with a bright blue LED display. It looked too modern for the rest of the room, which was stuck in the early 2000s. Something about it gnawed at me. The way the light hit its surface, the way it seemed positioned perfectly toward the bed. I leaned closer. That's when I saw a tiny, perfectly round pinhole just above the numbers. It was angled directly at me. A cold shiver slid down my spine. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a sensor, part of the clock's design. But I remembered reading stories about hidden cameras inside, clocks exactly like this. My stomach twisted. I picked it up. It was heavier than a normal alarm clock, and as I held it, I heard a faint mechanical hum inside, like a small fan or motor. And then Shadow's head snapped up. His ears pricked, a low growl rumbling in his throat. He stared at the door. That's when I heard it too. A door, closing, somewhere else in the house. Not the front door. Somewhere deeper. Every muscle in my body locked. Mr. Ellison wasn't supposed to return until Sunday. It was Wednesday night. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps crept across the hallway carpet. I moved quickly, setting the clock back down and rushing to the door. I turned the lock just as the footsteps stopped on the other side. A beat of silence. Then his voice. Calm, but just slightly uneven. Open up. I left something in there last time I was home. My throat was dry. I couldn't make a sound. It's not what you think, he continued. That's not a camera. It's a motion sensor for the dog. I didn't want to freak you out by mentioning it. Just open the door. I backed away, heart hammering. While I didn't respond, the calm slipped from his voice. It grew sharp, angrier. Don't be ridiculous. Open the door. The doorknob rattled violently. Then came the pounding. Shadow barked and lunged at the door, snarling, which only seemed to fuel Ellison's frustration. His fists slammed harder, shaking the thin frame. My only option was the window. It was low enough to climb out, but the latch stuck. My hands trembled as I fought with it, fumbling 3 times before it finally gave. Behind me, Ellison's voice had changed completely. No more calm veneer. Now I was raw, furious. If you don't open this door, I'll get my key. I'll call the cops. I'll tell them you broke in. The pounding rattled the walls. Shadows barking filled the room. I shoved the window open, dragging myself out into the cold night. My feet hit the damp grass, and I ran. I sprinted across the side yard, down the gravel driveway, lungs burning, heart crashing in my chest. I didn't look back until I reached the road. I ducked behind a cluster of mailboxes, shaking, clutching my phone. I called my mom, whispering for her to come. She lived 15 minutes away. That 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Where her headlights finally appeared, I bolted for the car. I couldn't see the house from where I'd hidden, but I swore I felt eyes watching me from the dark. I stayed at her place the rest of the night. The next morning, I blocked Ellison's number and called a lawyer. But the lawyer told me the truth I didn't want to hear. Without proof, like footage from a device itself, pressing charges would be nearly impossible. Even if the clock was a hidden camera, Ellison could claim it was a sensor. It would be my word against his. I considered going back to grab the clock, to take pictures. But the thought of stepping into that house again, of possibly running into him, made me sick. The lawyer strongly advised against it. So I let it go. I never got paid for those 3 nights. The woman who recommended me stopped answering my texts. I never learned if she knew what kind of man Ellison really was. But the nightmares didn't stop. For weeks, I dreamed of that little black lens staring back at me. I began checking every clock, every smoke detector, every frame in my apartment. I couldn't shake the thought that I had been watched the entire time. And worse, the sound of that door closing still echoes in my head. Because it means he wasn't just watching me through a camera. He was already inside the house. The whole time. Would you have stayed in that house after finding the clock? Or would you have run even sooner? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more true nightmare stories that will keep you up at night, don't forget to like, subscribe, and double check the shadows in your own room, because you never know who might be watching.